Hello, patrons, and on this episode of Wisdom Wednesday, we shall recall Gaming Weekend. Okay, guys, so as many of you know, I had Gaming Weekend. It's a special event once, sometimes twice a year, where I get together with my college roommate and all his buddies that he grew up with playing D&D, and we play a lot of D&D. Now, sometimes for Gaming Weekend, we share, we take turns who's DMing, but more recently, this campaign that we've been playing now for a little bit is set in the Forgotten Realms. And one of the things that I like is that as a player, I've come to enjoy the character Wakuda. And if any of you guys watched the games from Gary Gygax's house where I was a player, Wakuda is basically who I played. So if you're a Forgotten Realms geek, Wakuda is from Termish, which is kind of along the Sea of Fallen Stars. He's a fighter, and his background is sailor. And the people of Termish are known as the Turami, and the Turami are described as mahogany-skinned people with dark hair and brown eyes. So basically, they're the African people of the Forgotten Realms. When I came up with the idea for Wakuda, I wanted to have kind of a character who was like a swashbuckler, so that's why I picked the sailor background, but not necessarily a pirate. He's a good guy, but basically a fighter who can fight well, but also has like a high charisma and is also persuasive and able to interact socially. So we'd been playing this for a while, and I've just really grown to enjoy playing Wakuda. Now Dan has been the DM for the campaign, and there was a one day in the last Gaming Weekend where I actually ran sort of like an adventure within the campaign. We'll call it a side quest, but that gave Dan a chance to play his character. But basically, these characters have been adventuring and leveling through from Waterdeep, heading east along the Tradeway. And that's kind of the whole story arc for the campaign, is we're exploring the Tradeway and finding out what is going on with the Tradeway, because there's been a lot of mysterious things happening, strange creatures appearing and attacking caravans, and trade has basically been disrupted. So we've been commissioned by this company to investigate and handle threats along the Tradeway. Now, one interesting thing that I'd like to share as well is that the lore for this campaign has included in it has the lore from the group's previous campaigns. So when Dan and Chris and the guys were growing up, they played among many different kinds of campaigns. One such campaign was like a campaign where they had their most favorite characters, and we've all had that kind of situation in D&D, right? But this is like a campaign that they played for years and years, and eventually those PCs became powerful, and they had political power and wealth and so on. So they have built that into the lore of this current Forgotten Realms campaign, so that basically Dan's old character, King Flafluter Flam, is basically now the person who is in charge of having hired this new generation of PCs to investigate what's going on in the Tradeway. So I think that's kind of cool. And I've mentioned that before, I think on Feedback Friday and even on comments and social media. But anytime that you can incorporate your own game group's lore into the world, I think it's kind of cool. It rewards the players who had the characters who survived long enough to become part of the legends. And it's kind of a reference and a nod to your older, experiences, whether that was when you were playing with your friends in 8th grade or high school or college or whatever it might be. So anyway, for this Gaming Weekend, so that's some of the background. For this Gaming Weekend, we picked up where we left off, and we were heading into the Troll Hills, and like kind of we had a pit stop at the Borskier Bridge, and then we headed into the Troll Hills, and we were going to be investigating some strange things that were going on there. This then led us into the Fields of the Dead, and while in the Fields of the Dead, we come across this house where, this family is kind of living, and the way I envisioned this is, if you're a Game of Thrones fan, I envisioned basically that we were like north of the wall, and this is a family of wildlings. So not that there's a wall, but like anybody who lives in the Fields of the Dead has to be pretty used to like skeletons and zombies and stuff. So we come across this family. We find out that there's another family on another farm a few miles away, and this current family that we're with doesn't know if they lived or died. They're not sure. So we decide to go check it out. We go to this house. We check it out. We find that there are no survivors. However, all along we've been hearing this haunted like laugh, like a little child laughing. So we find out that this other family who's disappeared and apparently been, maybe killed or something, had a daughter. And the daughter, so we found like the bedroom of the children. We found the daughter's dresses and her favorite stuffed animal or doll, or I don't remember. So we were kind of like gathering this information and thinking maybe maybe it's not too late. It looks like maybe, the little girl has been kidnapped or something. We go into the cellar and we discover just a horde of ghasts and ghouls, and we narrowly defeat them, but we make it out, and we find in that cellar the rest of the family, but not the little girl's body. The rest of the family has been like massacred. So we decide to embark out to search for this girl. And while roaming the Fields of the Dead, we come across this like little camp, and we see a little girl, and we ask like, Annabelle, is that you? And then she's like, yes. And we're like, come with us. We'll take you to safety. She's like, no, I'm happy here with my aunties. And we're like, your aunties? Who's that? So sure enough, her aunties are three night hags. Now, when they come out, they're disguised, or their appearance is an illusion. They just look like three old nice ladies. But my character actually made the perception check, because I was like kind of looking out the corner of my eye, and I saw what she really was, right? So I kind of low-key warned the rest of the group, like, these are hags. So we're talking with them. Combat hasn't broken out. We're talking with them. And my gut instinct as a player is like, let's not start a fight with hags, because they probably have minions or powerful spells or other just bad powers. Plus, like, this is their lair. This is where they live, and there's three of them. So I'm trying to like talk and convince the hag to like let us take the girl, and we'll give her something in trade, and and then Leroy Jenkins happens. So one of the players decides to attack. So all hell breaks loose. It's like that slow motion apocalypse moment where you realize, oh my God, we're screwed. And Dan, to his credit, and Dan, I know you might be watching because Dan's one of the patrons. Dan, it's not your fault. It is entirely the choices of the players who are at fault. They are the ones that led to the inevitable doom. Which is, by the way, we survived. Somehow. We survived. The hags had minions. The minions, we drove the minions back. We drove the hags back. We explored their hag tree hut house thing. We rescued Annabelle. We narrowly made it out, okay? We almost died, but we made it. We burned down their hag tree nest and all their camps, and we were like, yay, we won, right? Whew, it was a close one. So, I mean, out of spells, very low on hit points, everybody needs a rest. We get as far away from that camp as we can, from their lair as we can. We make a camp, we set up watch, all the usual D&D strategy. And on my watch, I see one of the hags over by a tree, like trying to pin a note to the tree. And I like run over there. She disappears. I read the note, and it's like a note for one of the other players. Like kind of a mysterious question, like, don't you want to know who your father is? And this recurring theme of like the hags having secret information and being tempting the players into making some kind of bargain with them has been kind of a running thing. So I alert everybody, hey, I saw one of the hags. Here's this note for you. Nat looks it over and discards it. Well, then on another watch, one of the hags comes up with another note to another one of the players. And now at this time, Chris's character, who has incredible stealth capabilities to the point where he's basically almost invisible, he's like a ranger rogue. So he's got his bow notched and he's kind of got this hag in his sights, just like a sniper basically, just in case anything goes bad. And there's like a little talk back and forth, and I'm thinking, okay, guys, we're smart enough to not engage with these hags when we're low on spells, low on hit points, and everything, right? And then things start to go south, and it looks like the dwarf might pick up his axe, and as soon as the hag makes the move, Chris is going to shoot her. And I say, and many of you saw this tweet, are you sure? Hey, isn't shooting the hags gonna? I don't remember exactly what it was, but Chris was like, I'm gonna shoot the hag, and I was like, isn't doing that what almost got us killed last time? He's like, yeah, because that I missed last time. This time I won't miss, literally, and then he rolls a 1, so it doesn't go well. The hags bust out mad damaging powers on us, and we get basically annihilated. I was the first one to die. So I'm not pissed, okay? It's a game. Do I love Wakuda? Yes. But it's a game. And death happens. And sometimes it's good to reflect on that. I've lost many a character who I loved. But death is a part of gaming. And if you didn't have that threat of dying and losing your character permanently to death, I feel like the game would lose some of its meaning. Now, I don't know about you guys watching this, but to me at least, that's my opinion. I think the threat of actual character death, the permanence of it, it can be hard, but it's a good thing to have in your game. So we die. We get killed. And a couple of the guys held out pretty long, but basically ended up dying. So here we are, not even basically midway through gaming weekend, and we had a TPK. And Dan feels horrible. And again, Dan, it's not your fault. You did your best. The players just made stupid choices. So we end up making a new party. And the premise for the new party is pretty open-ended because we hadn't planned on this happening. So I offered a DM, and I decide that I'm going to run Lagoch. So it was an interesting experience. I had my Lagoch notes out, my NPCs. I had some of the maps. Players kind of were into it. So here's my self-evaluation. I think I spent too much time. I spent actually too much time introducing NPCs and introducing the town and the politics and stuff to the players. And actually, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think we spent too much time just role-playing. So a few of the guys, like Steve particularly, had a great character concept where he came from a family of craftsmen, guildsmen, and he was trying to establish some trade links. So he was doing a lot of interacting with NPCs, which I love, but that was very boring for everyone else. So is that Steve's fault? No. As the player, he was doing what he should do. What I should have done is kind of summarized some more of those role play interactions, and then moved the storyline and the plot and the encounters along. But anyway, so it kind of dragged. What I learned, though, was that what we've built so far with Lagoch does work in terms of creating a very rich and realistic town. What I think I need to improve on is how I think about how to take all these NPCs and make adventure hooks out of them, even simple things. So fast forward, I see the boredom in the group, so I create an adventure hook where basically they've been hired to drop off payment at the edge of the Manarian forest to someone who they were told was named Akron Billet. And Akron Billet would have a box for them, and they would bring the box back, and then they would get paid. So they get this huge bag with platinum, full of platinum, like 100 platinum. And they take the bag to the edge of the Manarian forest. They follow the markers and stuff that their employer told them to follow. And they find this forest gnome who kind of looks sketchy, and he has a box. He takes the payment. He gives them the box. They were told explicitly not to open the box. They get back to town. They drop off the box. They get paid. So it was just a simple mission. There were a couple interactions along the way with guards, but they basically socially bluffed their way through everything. So, but then they're kind of like curious, like, what's in the box? And like, why was this, what contraband is this, son? And they start to find out that this was actually Moya fruit. And they find out a little bit by investigating further that the Moya fruit has different properties. It's an edible delicacy. It can be used when processed as for medicinal purposes, but it can also be used for magical purposes. So they started to get a little insight into that, which was cool. And I think they were sort of into it. Oh, one other thing I totally forgot about. When they finally settled in town in an inn, they went to the Gilded Spirit, and ended up partaking in a gladiatorial combat. So initially they were just kind of watching the gambling and boxing, and they did a little bit of dice games and gambling, but then they overheard a conversation about something going on downstairs. So then they were kind of lured and interested in this. And John was playing a new character that he made after the TPK, who was a huge half-orc, just massive half-orc barbarian, named Unk. And Unk was just an awesome, like, well-played character by John. Just one of those fun, like, Unk see this, Unk do that, Unk smash, Unk chop, Not real complex, but sometimes the most fun characters can be pretty simple. So anyway, Unk gets recruited to fight in this gladiatorial combat. And who's watching from the special premium box seat? None other than Lord Manju. So that was like the first time they got to see Lord Manju. So we played a little bit in Lagoch. They kind of found out some of the politics. They met some of the NPCs. Overall, my self-evaluation, though, was that I didn't get the adventure going enough. And I think it was helpful to try it out on a group of people. But I now know that I need to integrate more adventures ahead of time into the tapestry of Lagoch so that they have more options to choose from. And not just adventures, but hooks for the adventures. Because we have a lot of NPCs, but it was difficult making the hooks. So I had to improvise. One of the things that I improvised was I had them meet the herbalist, Adissa, and Adissa's dog, Shadow. And Shadow's actually a druid that I made up, who is in wild shape form. But basically, I decided to pick up on the secret society that meets in the basement of the Roaring Horde and integrate them into the storyline so that the unnamed, that's what they're called, the unnamed are basically a rebellion against Manju. They're people who are suspicious of Manju, who've been investigating Manju and are starting to carefully build alliances with other people, but they have to be careful because Manju has eyes and ears everywhere. So the PCs in the group kind of got involved with them, and they were kind of doing some investigative stuff, et cetera, et cetera. So we played, right? And we played till pretty late. And then, the guys played a little bit more where the adventurers, I had to leave and go to a film festival and then come back. But so Dan took over again and started running the guys through another adventure where basically we left Lagoch with this new group and started going to Elturel, because the companion of Elturel in the Forgotten Realms had faded. The little micro sun that had kept all the vampires away, it disappeared. So when they got to Elturel, they found out that Elturel also disappeared. So everybody knows that when I DM, I don't run published material, so I have no idea what's going on, because not only was I not at the table, but I was at a film festival, and I come back 3 hours later, and we're all in this mage tower trying to figure out where Elturel went. We decided to truncate the whole role-playing and investigation part, and basically we discover a portal and we go into hell, because Elturel went to the first plane of hell. I'm sorry, to the first plane of the abyss. And that's when I realized that Dan was running Descent into Avernus. So we play a little bit, and I'm not really feeling this druid. I mean, he was a good character, but every time I went to do something, I was like, man, if I were playing Wakuda, he'd be able to do this, even at lower level. It wasn't the right fit. So we kind of took a time out and we talked about what people wanted to play. Because I thought maybe the rest of the players would want to play their old characters. Maybe there's a way that we could come up narratively with it, where the old characters died, but actually they were brought into Avernus, and they can redeem themselves and regain their lives if they can figure out a way to stop this tome and return Elturel or whatever it is we need to do. So we talked it over out of game, and to my surprise, everybody kind of liked their new characters. Chris, for example, likes his new character because there's more of a character to play, whereas his older character was a deadly, deadly sniper, but didn't have a lot of personality. Steve seemed to like his new textile businessman character. John definitely liked Unk, the half-orc, more than he did his former tiefling character. So everybody kind of liked their newer characters. Oh, and Dan played Unk's brother. So I was the only one who wanted to play his old character. But Dan, being a kind person, figured out a way for that to happen. So Wakuda comes back, but he lost a lot of levels. So I go from level 9 to level 5, which is fine, because I realized at that point it's not about the levels, it's not about the power, it's about the character. There's just something about that character that I loved playing. So it was a strange gaming weekend. I think it's fair to say, and Dan can comment if he wants, that might have been the weirdest gaming weekend we've ever had. Partially because of the TPK and stuff, but just, I think when I ran the Lagoch part, it was like a weird side quest that didn't fit in with the rest of the Forgotten Realms. So we went from Forgotten Realms to Lagoch to Descent into Avernus. So it was a strange thing. But anyway, I don't know. Those are the reflections. I think part of wisdom is thinking about what worked well and what didn't work well. So we'll see what happens at the next gaming weekend. Whether or not we continue and we work together, or we die in hell. But in the meantime, thank you guys so much for your support and for hanging on with me through this busy time of the year. And I hope you are all doing well. Peace out. Love you. Bye.